who would like to make a comment or ask staff a question? Go ahead, Director Hutchinson.
Thank you. I want to start with a quote from one of our teachers that we just heard that I think is very apt right now. Phony math is not going to work. I'm actually embarrassed by the report that I just saw. And I'm not embarrassed for Mr. Christmas or staff. I'm embarrassed for board leadership that directed them to put that together in a few days and present that to us. So I took copious notes through all of it. So I'm just going to storm through my notes in my time here. So I appreciate Mr. Christmas being honest with us, though. And on the first page, he started off by telling us that this is an opinion and that he was going to try to prove it. I find that highly inappropriate that a staff member would stand in front of the board to try to prove their opinion. That's highly inappropriate. And that sure doesn't set the framing for a neutral presentation of the facts. I thought it was interesting also that he said that he was using a mirror. I actually think he was using a prism. And he was definitely trying to refract the information in a certain way. There were documents in there about the strategic plan and what our strategic vision is. I'm very familiar with the strategic plan because I was honored to actually work on it. A strategic plan we all unanimously approved. Our strategic plan has no mention of school closures, no mention of the blueprint, and no mention of the citywide plan. So please don't tell me this is a part of our strategic work because it is not listed in our strategic plan. Like members of the community, I was surprised to see the term full service community schools brought back and all through here. I thought that was thrown out and failed with Tony Smith. And now we're seeing a return to that language because yes, we do not have community schools, especially under the sustainable community schools model that many districts across the country have adopted. And also, one of the reasons why they haven't been as effective is instead of hiring teachers or hiring community members to be community schools managers, we've hired people at six-figure jobs. That doesn't seem very effective or efficient. Before we decide how we're going to move forward and strategically plan, we need to have a robust visioning process, first among ourselves, and then also including the community. I'm not going to make the mistake of past boards where we throw out one thing just to implement another thing without doing our due diligence in between. I also thought it was interesting that Mr. Christmas said he didn't have any causation in his report. It's hard to really use it for much if there's no causation. And more than once, I heard the term hypothesis being tested. Man, I thought we got rid of thought experiments when Charles Wilson left the district. Like, I've seen this before, y'all. This is not a report. And so looking at some of those plot graphs, when we're talking about academic outcomes and we don't adjust for race or socioeconomic status, it's garbage. You can compare us against 50 other districts, but it's not comparing apples to apples without doing some due diligence in the data. Higher compensation, paying teachers more, is actually a sign that you have more experienced teachers. And we didn't correct for that in any of the stats. And I'm really upset to see a plot graph when we talk about academic performance as it relates to class size. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of peer-researched reports out there that will give us the information we need. But we don't do that by doing a fourth grade scatter graph. That's just not the way that we should be making decisions. Now, in terms of declining enrollment, we are not a declining enrollment district. If you look at the stats, we've had declining enrollment since 2017-18. I think there's a lot of reasons to explain what happened in that 4-year period. But I think a lot of it is in 17-18, that's when the previous board implemented the fiscal vitality plan and implemented the blueprint. And we can see the result that that has had on our enrollment. And while we've had declining enrollment in some schools, the previous board voted to expand enrollment in other schools. Montclair got an addition, La Escuelita, Melrose expands, Tech expands. So this is not this narrative that we have declining enrollment and woe is me. It is our job as a school board to manage our resources. This plan and report that we just saw, again, is laughable and it's embarrassing. And I agree with another one of the public comments. I know the real reason is You didn't have the list together in time for the school closures, and that's coming next week. So why don't we just skip all of this garbage and let's get to the real deal? Because you ain't closing our schools, and this sure didn't justify it. Thank you.
Do we have other comments or questions?